Hello and welcome to Tabletop 24. I'm Alan and welcome to another episode of What Play Again, where we take a look at games we've recently got to the table with a view of how quickly we can get back to the table. With ever-growing collections, time can be precious. So we answer the question of, would we play again? Today, as you see, I'm on my own. That is because we are going to be going through a solo adventure. And today we are going to be delving into the world of Final Girl. Normally you would see this setup on the table and we'd run through how we're going to play. However, I thought it's very important to show you what Final Girl is and one of the unique points of it. So it's a modular system that you will always need a core box to play, and then you can pick up a feature film. These feature films will contain a monster and a location, and you can mix and match those however you see fit, along with some of the Final Girls that come in it to give you a real variety and sort of changing up the scenarios and making mix and match to what you want to see. But one of the really good things about these feature film boxes is how they're actually put together. So in this Once Upon a Full Moon, we have the Storybrooke Woods, which is our location. So we'll peel that off there, and we've got this magnetic board that is showing our location, which is lovely, as you'll see there. And then inside this half of the box, you have got your Final Girl and all the bits that you're going to need for your location. If you flip it over and do exactly the same, you will then get your villain. So in this case, the big bad wolf, and we'll pop him up there. And again, you'll have this nice sort of compact tray that will contain all of your villain items, your cards that you're going to need to set up the villain. That's what you'll see in each of your feature films. You'll have different types of cards that you might get in a few of them, different numbers, volumes, and everything like that. But that's what you'll have in a feature film. Now, the feature film will have different themes and different horror tropes. And then you can mix and match that to make something a little bit wacky, like a big bad wolf on a space ship, okay? Or a xenomorph roaming around a creepy manor. So that's there. But obviously, the next bit of this is going to be your core box. So like I say, you'll need this for any game that you play. And we're going to have a look what we've got in here. You've got your horror board. Then you've got your manual. And then underneath this tray here, we have got our action cards that we're going to be using to hopefully fight back the monster. We've got some health tokens, some meeples to indicate us and the monster, and victims, dice, some extra tokens that we're going to be using as part of the setup. But you will need these regardless of which feature film that you play. Okay, so we've sort of explained roughly what that is. What I'm going to do now is just get the game set up, and then we'll be back to run through some of the rules. Now that we've got the game set up, let's run through a few of the bits that we did during that setup. So we laid out our health tokens according to 9 for our killer, 5 horror we've started the game on. We've also then started on 5 health for our Final Girl, and you'll also see in here we've started with these extra last tokens, so 4 health plus 1, 8 health plus 1. When this final health is due to be taken, we will flip that over, and in a thematic flurry, either we're dead or the killer bursts back to life. Now, there are 3 out of, I believe, 12 tokens that will enable us to come back to life, or essentially not. We choose 2 cards to set up for our killer. We will have a Dark Power, which will boost them as we go through, and we'll have a Finale card, which will essentially drive the killer to a sort of a climax of finishing the game and make it a little bit harder. We'll also have set up some of the items for the locations that we've got on the board. You'll see there's others set out to one side. We pick one of the setup cards to put out some of the victims, the killer and the Final Girl. Then we start with an event, so it adds a little bit of flavour from the start of the game before we even go anywhere. And then we've got a terror deck of only 10 cards based on both the location and the killer mixed together, making 10, so you've got a little bit of variety as we go through. Then we set up this market down below and put all of our tokens to one side. So that's how we've got everything set up. The game of Final Girl will end in one of 2 ways. The first way is the final girl dying and we lose, and the second is that the killer dies and we win. Now, you'll notice that we've got these final tokens that we'll come back to later. The round itself is split over 5 different phases. The first phase is going to be the action phase, and we're going to spend that action phase using these cards that we've purchased, which we start with 6 bog standard basic cards, and we'll be using them to take our actions in a hope to push us towards our end game of killing the killer and surviving, opposed to getting killed by the killer. Now these will have some basic actions on them to start off with, and then get some more powerful actions later on that will cost us some time. Time's an important mechanism in the game, which we'll be tracking here, and we may end up having to use time to do certain things, or we may end up gaining time by different things we get with the cards, or spending time to take up some of these. We'll come to that in a second. But these cards will have basic actions such as focus to get rid of horror, gain time, walk to move around, short rest to gain some health, or a weak attack to do some damage. Now you'll notice on each of these cards you are going to get 3 different options. These will be based on the results you're going to roll on these horror die. Now, the number of horror die you roll depends on where you are on the horror track. The lower down the horror track you are, the more dice you're going to roll. The higher up the track you're going to roll you are, the less dice you're going to roll. So you're really going to have to try and balance that horror out throughout the game. Now, let's say we roll 2 dice, and here we go, we've got a hit and a miss. Now that would then, on this weak attack, enable us to do some damage to the killer if we were in the killer's space, or adjacent, depending upon a weapon we may have picked up. But it means that we're going to suffer a consequence, and that is to lose a health. Obviously, we don't want to be losing too much health, so we want to be careful when we're using these. Now, if we were lucky enough to have rolled the 2 card symbol, then we get the option to spend 2 cards from our hand to actually turn that into a success. And that can be critical at the right point in the game to gaining an advantage or actually stopping a real dire consequence. So the other option we can do with these cards is discard them and gain a time. For each card you discard, you can gain 1 time. Alternatively, you can just keep hold of these cards for another round, because once we've spent these cards, they go back into the market, but we can only buy them on the next round, not the current round. Okay, so it's very important to keep an idea of where the cards are or at what point they're going to be coming back to you, and maybe not blowing all your resources to start off with in the game. The next phase is the planning step. Like we said, we're going to be using that time then to purchase these cards based on the values in the bottom corner. Some cards we've got multiple copies of, other cards we've only got 1 copy of. Now, those cards we've got 1 copy of, they're a lot stronger, but you're not going to be able to buy them every round because of that, where they go back into the market and you've got to turn before you can buy them again, and they're quite expensive. So you do have a cap of 12 time, so you're not going to be buying a 5, a 6, and a 3. You just won't have the time to do it, and that time represents you preparing for using that ability, which I think is quite thematic. So you'll purchase that, and once you've got to the end of your time track, you spent all your time, we reset that back to 6, no matter where it was. Now, it could have been lower because we ended up spending time. For instance, on a short rest, we could have ended up having to spend time. Or on a walk, we could have had to spend time. Then we go into the killer phase. Now, this enables the killer to act. The killer will resolve its killer effect, which we'll have on the top of the finale card. Now, this killer is slightly different. It has 2 different modes. It has a hunting mode and a killing mode. And that's determined by its dark power. Now, typically, before the dark power is flipped, it's in a hunt mode, and then often, once it's flipped, it'll be in the kill mode. So all it's going to do for the time being is move and track either a victim or a final girl, depending upon whereabouts you are on the board. Then we will resolve one of these terror cards. Now, these are always something that's going to hurt you one way or another. Now, this is a special type of terror card, and this enables us to have a minor dark power. Add that to our wolf. Now what happens with that is that will gain 2 extra health, and also the effect that's on the card. So for instance here, when you move into or begin your turn in the big bad wolf space, you lose a health. Okay, so you don't want to be in anywhere near the killer space until that's gone. Now, once we take away that extra 2 health, that is then removed from the game. It won't be coming back, so that's quite useful. We will then keep going through that every round after round, and then once we've depleted this completely, we then get to flip the finale card. Okay. Now the finale card typically will either have a one-time ability or it'll have an ongoing ability, depending upon what it is, and it will then change what your killer's ability is. So for instance, here we're going to do some moving and some killing as we go through. Now, every time a killer is in a spot with a victim and they kill them, their bloodlust goes up. And when they reach the dark power, we will flip that dark power. And like I said, that then enables this particular killer to go into its kill mode. So it's done tracking people down and it's going to start affecting them. And also, when you reveal, there's also an ability on there. Those are slightly different for different cards, and obviously they'll be different for different killers. If the killer was to off one of these victims, we would then resolve a panic. Now, in that instance, there would be no panic because there was nobody else in that zone. But if there was 2 victims in this zone and one was killed, this victim would panic, and all we do is roll a dice, get a 3 on it, and we would move them into the zone by, and I've got that, by which number they would go to. So, for instance, in this one, actually rolling a 3 doesn't move it at all. So we'll be moving out of the zone. So we'll be watching where they panic, and they might go out of the way where you don't want them. We also have the option to be able to save our victims. When we're moving around, and we should have done this in the action phase, if we move, we can move 2 victims with us. And if at any point a victim is on the space with the final girl, we've saved them, we've rescued them. They wanted to be saved, they want to be helped. And then those victims will go over and sit on our final girl card. Now, where we put them is down to us, but we will then get the benefit on that card, on that slot where we've put that victim. If we then play 6, particularly on red, and other final girls will have different, we then get a permanent ability. So we've faced our fears. We're ready to battle the killer a little bit harder. And all of the final girls have slightly different variants on this. And you'll also get an ability based on if you then continue to rescue victims. So aim of the game is to rescue them. And if you're rescuing them, the killer can't kill them. So it kind of helps you out there, because the less victims on the board, the less this bloodlust is going to creep up. And as this bloodlust creeps up, you will notice that the killer gets stronger. It does special abilities. It can move faster. So you want to keep that bloodlust as low as possible to help survive as long as you can. Once we've got through the panic phase, we will then go to the upkeep phase, which is obviously where we reveal the finale, and we can rearrange any items we've picked up. Now, we haven't quite covered items, and we'll do that shortly. So the items that we've got out on the top of these decks that we may be able to pick up are a hatchet, which is a weapon. Weapons will boost any attacks that we do. They might give you a bit of flavour text and a bit of extra ability. Or there might be items like the basket, which will enable you to gain extra items. Or something that's like a single-use item or a multi-use item, such as the slingshot, which you will then use these little tokens to show off when you've actually used the abilities that are on them. Finally, we may have these tokens that we are using. These will be specific to the location, and they will be relevant based on events that we'll be pulling up. So you might not always use them, but you might, and you might come across them. So it's best to have them out just in case you get to an event that is going to cause that. Now, you won't be getting many events in the game, but there might be the chance where they come out and they give you a bit of Now, there's a lot going on in this game, and I think I've only just sort of scratched the surface of it. But let's wind it a little bit back to the beginning of this video where we looked at the feature film. Now, we've got this out here in front of us. Now, this sort of points to a lot of collectability. There are now 2 seasons out with, I believe, 5 different feature films in each. This is only one of those. So there's 10 more of those. That gives you 100 possibilities of combinations between killer and location, let alone then the bit that you've got in regards to how many final girls you've got, and I believe you get 2 in each box, so that's another 20 final girls. So the combinations with that are immense. But the negative of that comes with the setup and the storage of such a thing, because These are all right. They're a nice size, sort of VHS, and that's a little bit of a pun at how the storage box looks for each of the seasons. But they're not particularly small. They do house a lot of space, and they've got a lot of components in them. But you have to then decide which one you're taking off. And if you're mixing and matching, you're then taking one bit from this box, one bit from that box. And I think I only have this one, and this one was very kindly provided by AJ at Van Rider Games at the UK Games Expo. But I'd imagine the more you get, the less likely you might be to switch, unless you're having a session of Final Go, in the sense of you're going to get 2 or 3 games played and you're going to mix and match and change it up. But that then involves a little bit of extra tear down, a little bit of extra setup. You then have to separate out the terror cards and mixing them together. And yes, the main part down here isn't changing, but everything else does. And I think that might put some people off. I think it's half the course these days in the hobby gaming industry, because you are going to get a lot of setup. If you want that choice and that variety, that's there. But if you don't, there's a lot of variety in this one feature film. Okay, so let's run through the variety we've got. We've got 2 different Final Girls. We have got 3 different Dark Powers, 4 different finales, one of which is an epic finale, which adds a really hard mode to it. We've then got 5 different setup cards. I think something like 16 or 18 different items. We only use 12. Multiple events, where I think the most I've seen in a game so far has been 3. We only use 10 terror cards out of about 24. And that doesn't then include how you actually play the game, and whether all those combinations then change how that is. And that's in one box. I've played 5 games of this now, and not one of them has felt the same. They've all been very different. They've all required a different solution to get into it, and one of them was a lot of luck. There was a bit of luck in that, and we'll come back on luck when we get there. But there was a lot to how we progressed through that game, and you can suddenly get a turn with an event. You can suddenly hit a terror card that changes it up, and just those combinations of variety you've got in there. I think I could just sit with this one feature film and the core box and just play it, and that's my Final Girl experience. Now, being the gamer that I am, or the games I've got around me, anybody that's seen some of the stuff that's come through the unboxings knows that's probably not going to suit me, and I'm probably going to be tracking down one of the seasons, if not both. And season 3 is coming to Kickstarter. But I've probably given us away to the sort of final verdict on this already. But just to know there's a lot of this out there. Your experience and mileage might vary with how you, whether you want just the one. Now, you're going to need this regardless of what you do. But which of these feature films that you pick up might be a sort of desire based on what you like and what theme you would look towards. But I think even if you just have the one in the core box, you've got a lot of replayability there, just in that sort of setup. You then add another feature film to it, and you've got a lot more going for you as well. So we mentioned choices and decisions, and there's so many in there. Which victims do you save? How do you avoid the killer? Do you risk it all to play a card you're not quite prepared for? Do you end up spending all your cards and then fighting to get them back later on in the game? Do you focus on searching to get your items, or you just go in for the kill? Do you manage the horror early? And all those choices are so deep for you. They come with, again, we've said it and we'll come back to it, a little bit of luck. But there's so much for you to do. Now, you always want to do a bit more, and you are limited to the cards. You can only ever have 10 cards in hand, although I've never got anywhere near that. It is possible, but I've not done it. You've then got different items you'll be picking up, and do you want, for instance, here we've got 2 weapons that have come out. This was specifically stacked this way, but you might not have weapons. You might have to go digging for weapons. But do you need a weapon to start off with? And do you just chance your arm and take something as it comes? Or do you just plan out for the long game? Now, the longer that you wait, the more likely that killer is going to be starting to kill. Depending upon the killer, they may be interacting differently. This dark power comes out only after 2 bloodlusts move. Some dark powers come up after 4 or 5. Some start the game with it. So it's really important to manage that sort of expectation of what you're trying to achieve and what choice you're going to try and make. But with that comes what I would say is quite a sort of steep learning curve, but only from a point of perfection. Now, if you want to take this at the experience that it is and the trope of Final Girl that probably doesn't survive or might survive, then you're prepared that you're going to lose occasionally. And you should lose games every so often, because if you're not losing a game, are they really challenging what you're doing, or are they just a story experience? And this isn't just a story experience. This is a challenging sort of action selection puzzle type game, and you are put through your paces to come out on top and come out the victor. So there is a bit of learning that I did. Now, I found some combination of cards really worked for me and my play style. Other people might find that they've got different routes to it. So I think it does bear repeat play, and I wouldn't say be put off if you did happen to lose your first game, because actually I think you're almost supposed to. Now, mentioned it a few times, luck. You are rolling dice at the end of the day. These dice have 3 different faces on it. Yes, you can mitigate by spending cards. Cards are expensive. You might not want to. Yes, and that's only if you get the right symbol. There are cards here that will help you re-roll dice, for instance, on a close call, or planning, enabling you to roll extra dice, or ones where you're obviously getting the horror track around the right way and actually getting more dice. So you can mitigate some of that luck, but that doesn't stop a terror card coming up at just the wrong time and just the wrong bit. I think I mentioned the scenario that we had where all the victims appeared on one place and just got killed with the next event, and that just annihilated the game. That's just luck. Actually, do you know what? That's a little bit thematic as well with this type of thing. Nothing in this is by accident in that sense, and it all fits part of that theme of, do you know what? Just sometimes the killer has just got the better of you, and it's just going to have ruined your game. And like I say, you've got to take that with a little bit of pinch of salt, that this is a challenge, and there might be that little bit of luck. Mitigate it where you can, strategize against it where you can, but that is in there, and some people might not like that. I think there's a game where it came down to a dice roll for me, and I was successful. I was happy. Maybe if I'd have lost that, I'd have been a bit salty. So yeah, be warned of that. But I mentioned that theme, and that theme is so strong in this. For what is a hand-building action game, the theme of this is so important and so tied into everything you are doing, and all of the setup variants enable you to do it, and the events that are specific to the map that you're on, and the tarot cards that are specific to both of those people, both of those sort of parts of the feature film. It's just theme throughout. It's just how they interact, and the fact as you go through this, like say, we've got here a wolf card. There's another wolf card. You watch, these are all going to be wolf cards. I did shuffle these, I promise. And here, for instance, we've got a Storybook Woods card. So it's Once Upon a Time. So it's specific to this part. So it's adding that little bit of theme. And actually, when you then mix and match, you've got that bleed of theme. So the wolf's still going to do wolf things, whether it's in Storybook Woods, on the spaceship, or in a creepy manor. It's still going to do wolf things. Whereas I think other games like this will possibly make the tarot deck more generic, whereas this just doesn't do that. It's theme throughout. Everything you do has theme and has a reason for that theme. Even down to when you win with a Final Girl, you get one of these little envelopes, and I won't tell you what's in there, but you get that when you win the first game, which is a nice little thing, and it applies just to that Final Girl. So yeah, theme throughout, and then you play your story. That's what I felt, was every time I got this to the table, it was a new story. It was a different story. It was, although it was still Red or Gretel versus the wolf in Storybook Woods, it was a different encounter. It was, right, okay, my first game, I got the woodsman that came with me. So it was Red and the woodsman versus the big bad wolf. In another one, we got these travelers. So there was more victims out there, and it almost felt like a rescue mission and trying to sort of corral all these victims away. Other ones where you've just got the wolf having some really powerful, strong abilities. I did have one game where all three of the minor dark powers came out, and that was just a really tough game. And it just felt like I got this big bad wolf on steroids. So they were all different stories that were almost unique for me. And that again is in one feature film. Put that across 9 others, and I think we've got something a little bit different. So I think we've probably gathered where I sit on this when we get to the end of it. For me, this is going to be a would play again soon. Now, the only reason it's soon and not now is because if I had another feature film, I think I'd get this to the table quicker. I do not for a second believe I've played this to death. Nowhere near. But obviously, it gets to that point where, oh, there's other options out there. Let's have a look at those. So we're probably a few months away from the Season 3 Kickstarter, so I'll probably be checking that out. There's 2 different seasons that are available now. This is part of Season 2, and probably one of the recommended as one of the onboarding feature films. So check out all of those, because I think even if you don't like one of the feature films, you might like another. Now, for me, horror is something I'm not interested in, normally. But I really like what Van Ryder does. I was a Hostage Negotiator fan, so I went into this and actually, do you know what? It's not gory horror. There's no sort of malaffliction with any of the cards that are coming up, and I take it very much as an action game. But it gives you that suspense feeling of a horror of, is the killer going to come around the corner and get you? So, like I say, for me, would play again soon, would recommend it, and it's going to be one of my solo games of choice. So with all that said, if you haven't done so already, please check out other videos on the channel. Check out the interview that we did with AJ, where we caught up with him at UKGE. Give us a like and subscribe, and we will catch you next time. Take care.